welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena. I'm Griffin Senek. Alongside me is my co-host Devin Bernstein, and we've got a Super Bowl matchup. It's going to be Chiefs 49ers. It's always been the Chiefs at the end of the day. I mean, death, taxes, and Kansas City going to the Super Bowl. So we're going to talk about the conference championship round, preview the Super Bowl a little bit, although we'll probably do most of our heavy lifting with that next week. And we'll talk a little NBA. There was a big MLB trade that went on, so we're going to touch on that. But yeah, we're going to start with the NFL. Great weekend of games. I mean, both relatively close. One high scoring, one not so high scoring. We'll start with the first one, Chiefs Ravens. And 17-10 is the final score. Kansas City, I feel like, was in control though for the entire game. It felt like pretty much, the score indicates it was a close game no matter what, but the Ravens really, they scored the late touchdown, I guess, or the late field goal. They never really were it felt like in it. Lamar had a bad interception, but I think this just comes down to the Chiefs. They're just, loaded on defense this year, and offense just found a way to get it done. Your thoughts on the game, Dev? And obviously, probably, we talked about it a little off air, texted about it, and I think, one of Patrick Mahomes' most impressive playoff runs of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to sit back here and look at Mahomes' career and be like, this is the most impressive part of it because he's already won two Super Bowls, two MVPs, two Super Bowl MVPs. He's made the championship game every year. He lost in the Super Bowl one year. Like, the guy has the most impressive resume you could imagine through the first, six starting years of a career. Um, and what really stands out to me about this run is just how out of nowhere it came. I mean, this was not a team that was looking good on offense against the Raiders. They weren't looking good on offense against the Broncos. They weren't looking good on offense against anyone. I mean, to come out in the playoffs and say what you want about the Dolphins defense and the Bills defense, and yeah, they're maybe not the best defenses, but these are playoff caliber defenses who both had really good seasons at points of the year. And it's like these were no slouches, and Mahomes just completely tore them up. And then you face the Ravens, who've been by far the best defense, held the Texans without a touchdown in two games this year. Um, and they just, I mean, they weren't dominant. They only scored 17 points all in the first half, but they did everything they needed to do. They kept moving the ball. They kept converting on third downs. Mahomes was efficient. They couldn't really run the ball super well, but kind of didn't matter. Um, you know, I just I just don't think we've ever seen someone, I'm gonna word this very carefully. I don't think we've ever seen someone play better than Patrick Mahomes has played over the last 5 years. Obviously, Brady has the better resume, is the GOAT, no questions asked. At this point, of course. But what Mahomes is doing is basically he's become Brady with an even bigger arm and some of the best playmaking instincts we've ever seen from the quarterback position. I mean, maybe he doesn't have quite the processing ability of Brady, maybe not quite the accuracy or touch, but he's basically at a Brady level with all the non-physical stuff. And physically, he's basically Josh Allen. I mean, he's not quite as fast, not quite as strong, maybe not quite as much of an arm, but he has an absolute cannon. He is very fast, very agile, very hard to tackle for whatever reason. The NFL, like he kind of like made a joke about it, how he kind of has a dad bod. Like, how is this dude outrunning everyone? Like, I don't understand. Like, we're in the age of the NFL where most, good edge rushers are 250-pound guys who run in the 4.5s, and Mahomes just runs right by them every time, it feels like. Like, I don't understand that. Like, I know this is supposed to be some analysis, but I genuinely do not understand how Mahomes is so hard to tackle. But that's a big thing in the playoffs. Like, the scrambling ability becomes huge. So can't be more impressed by Mahomes. Kelsey is back. Their defense is obviously very, very good. Um, I'll say this: if they keep Chris Jones around and Travis Kelsey around for another couple of years, and they're able to get like even just two more starting caliber receivers, like this isn't going anywhere, guys. Like I know it's annoying. Like I would say I'm 10% sick of the Chiefs, whereas everyone is 100% sick of the
Yeah, I
Chiefs.
know.
Like, like I get it. It's like, yeah, like they show Swift a lot, but it's like 30 seconds of the game. It's like, okay, it's not that big of a
Yeah.
deal. Like they talk about it a lot. It's like it's kind of annoying. And it's like we've seen the Chiefs do this every year, but it's like, I don't know. The thing to me is they're very different from the Patriots because the Patriots cheated. Um, like the Patriots, they were
Point
spying
blank,
on
yeah.
teams, they were deflating balls. Like there were multiple scandals with the Patriots. Um, and you know, I think we'll get to a point where the Chiefs are pretty unlikable, like from an objective standpoint. If they've won like 5 Super Bowls in 8 years, like yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna start rooting against them pretty heavily. Um, but we're not at that point. I don't see the reason to hate the Chiefs. Maybe this is just a rationalization in my mind so I can root more heavily against the 49ers. Uh, but I just hats off to the Chiefs. They're inevitable. Kelsey is back. Like in a big way. Like they just Kyle Hamilton, who is an all-pro level player, 6'4", 220, is one of the only guys that you look at and say, you know what, maybe he could, lock up Travis Kelsey. Nope, not even at all. I've gone on for a while here. I don't have much else to say. Um, but I can't be I there's no understating in how impressed and surprised I am by this Chiefs team, which shouldn't be as surprising because they're the freaking Chiefs. And I guess this is our lesson that they are basically the Heat of football, but they have Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
You can't count them out, and they have the best player in the world, so it's pretty tough to beat them. Especially with the way that defense has been playing. But what are your thoughts on this, Griff? I know,
Yeah.
I know we were talking about this a lot, so yeah, go
No, I
ahead.
agree with a lot of what you said. The one thing I actually want to bring up real quick that you brought up that I think was interesting is about the whole Taylor Swift thing. There was a Colin Coward like take on this
Yep.
that kind of circulated. Yeah. And I actually watched my professor in my sports journalism class put it on. And it is true. It's like the average time CBS shows her per game is like 25 seconds out of 3.5 hours. It's like really not that big a deal. Like it's really not a problem. So yeah, that's just another thing. I think, yeah, like you said, we just got to stop doubting the Chiefs. Like this team has proven year in and year out that they're going to be in this spot every year. And the only one it feels like who's basically stopped Mahomes has been Brady. I know Burrow beat him one year. I guess that's his kind of other foe. But like other than that, I mean, he's beaten everyone he's faced. So, and we say it every year. It's like, why are we down Mahomes? Why are we down Mahomes? And then there's a point where everyone's like, oh, the Chiefs are done. Like this team's not good. And it's like they're just the Chiefs, man. Um, yeah, I agree. Kelsey, a down year, obviously he's getting up there in age. You gotta wonder if the off the field stuff probably, I mean, I think it had to have affected him somewhat. I mean, he basically became a like A-list celebrity essentially in the world, which is like I mean, for NFL players, like I don't even know if Patrick Mahomes is that. Like it's like probably Brady and Kelsey now. Like are the only two guys where
Yep.
I'm like they just have that status. So you got to wonder if that played into it. Regardless, he's looked good. Rasheed Rice has been great there. Pacheco has been great. I thought it was awesome to see MVS catch the game sealing pass on a deep ball. Obviously, I think a lot of those Chiefs receivers are I obviously can't speak for them, but I'm sure it takes a toll when the media just buries you and trashes you consistently. And to seal the game winning catch was pretty cool to see. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, this team, and it's different from past Chiefs teams, is their defense is just so freaking good. I mean, it is so good at all levels. Their secondary, I mean, they've two of the best corners in the league in Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed. And, Sneed, they're going to have to re-sign. I mean, that's almost as high a priority as Chris Jones almost, they're going to have to get the checkbook out. I don't know if they'll be able to keep both those guys. I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, their defense is sensational. Spags does a great job there. And, you know, they just made the Ravens look, you know, not like the Ravens. I don't know. We've seen the Ravens. I mean, the way the Ravens beat down like the Dolphins and the 49ers at the end of the season, and then to see this, it's kind of crazy at home as well. That's another thing. The whole Mahomes hasn't played on the road narrative. Just let's never talk about that again. That was the stupidest thing I think we've ever seen. Um, yeah, I know we've talked a lot about the Chiefs. They played great. The Ravens are, I don't really know what the game plan was coming in here. I mean, they run the ball 5 times with 6 times with their running backs. I mean, this team is built on the run. Like at the end of the day, like yeah, Lamar's the MVP and like he's a sensational talent, but like Lamar Jackson is not like when we're strictly talking about passing quarterback. Lamar Jackson is not like in the top 10, maybe not even in the top like I guess he's probably top 15, but like he's not like leaning on him against this secondary with his arm. I just don't understand it, especially these weapons. Like I know it's better than what they've had, but like you've got Mark Andrews who clearly was not 100%. You know, Zay Flowers is a dog, but then like it's just like a bunch of washed up guys like Aguilar, OBJ. Like I don't know. I disagreed with their offensive game plan. But also, I mean, just these stupid penalties in this game. I mean, they had a bunch of them, and I'm not saying I agree with the taunting rule or whatever or all this stuff, but I mean, I think they had 4 unsportsmanlikes or something like that, which is just like I know it's a chippy game. I know there was drama pregame with Tucker and all this stuff in the media, but it's like you have got to be disciplined, and that's one thing we've seen with the Chiefs is like I think this game was a difference of like who's been there and who hasn't. Like the Chiefs, like they're used to this. They're used to the noise. They're used to playing, through adversity. But it's like the Ravens just looked like out of sorts, and they just looked like the moment had gotten to them. I don't know. Obviously, they had a great season. That defense is legit and is going to be, a problem even with defensive coordinator Mike McDonald leaving for Seattle. But I don't know, man. I disagreed with their. I mean, 6 carries by the running backs to me was just absolutely crazy. I don't know what it's Todd Monken there, right? He's the current guy.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
don't know what that game plan was, but hey man, that's you know, I don't know. But at the end of the day, Mahomes, I mean, 30 for 39 completion percentage. I mean, I think that kind of says it all. I mean, this guy's a stud and we got to stop doubting him. So I've been rambling on probably even longer than you were. So I'm going to stop talking now. Do you have anything else you want to add or on to the next one?
Um, just quickly, yeah, like what are we doing with the fighting in a championship game, guys? Like like you said, like it's chippy, whatever. There's some type of stuff pregame, there's some type of rivalry, whatever. Like that's cool. Like you just can't be costing your team in a playoff win or go home game. It's like
Winner go like
Flowers.
win and go to the Super Bowl. It's not even just
Yeah,
like the wild card round. It's like
yeah. I just I, I don't I don't know. Like it's not even like this is the type of team with an identity that's like, we're gonna hit you in the mouth. Like maybe a little bit, but they're not like one of the like the Niners. Like I get it with the Niners because that's
or
like
like
their
the
whole
Lions. The Lions
yeah,
are like that team.
yeah, the kneecap biters. But like
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't get it. I'm obviously not an NFL player. Maybe you have to be a little bit crazy to be on an NFL defense, which I think there's some merit to that. Like not crazy, but like you gotta have that dog in you at the very least. So yeah, that was just like frustrating as someone who was like hope I wasn't really rooting for the Nine or for the Ravens rather, but I would have been happy to see them go and I would have been happy to see a great game. And it was just frustrating that a big reason was because they were undisciplined. That just feels like that shouldn't be the case. But moving on to a great game. Obviously a
Crazy.
frustrating one for me at home. I I thought this one was over. I started playing Xbox. I look back and Brandon Ayuk had made one of the craziest plays of all time. And I strapped in for what I knew was going to be a painful couple of hours. I don't even have the final score up, so I don't know
I
what
think it's
I was
34-31.
34-31. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, so just a couple of things I want to talk about. The fourth down decisions, one thing I will say that's been talked about on Twitter a decent amount is like, yeah, they were dumb, but also they don't really trust their kicker, which is like fair, but also why do you not trust your kicker? Like, it's the NFL.
Yeah,
What are we
I feel
doing?
like Badgley is pretty like solid too. Like he's not like terrible.
Apparently, he has bad numbers from 40 to 49. I don't know. I don't really agree with the decisions to go for it, especially the second one. It just felt like I love going for it. I love the idea of being aggressive. I love trying to end a game when you can against a really good team. But to make a game a three possession game as opposed to, you go for it and you still have 20 plus yards to get a touchdown just doesn't seem like the most efficient way. Obviously, they caught some really, really bad breaks, dropped interceptions, a dropped interception that Brandon Ayuk said, "Oh, I'll catch this." And, you know, what are they gonna say about Brock Purdy now, Griff? I mean, he played well. Like the scrambling was impressive. Like clearly he has some playmaking instincts that people in the draft didn't see coming, along with obviously the processing and the accuracy and the timing and whatever. Purdy's a really good player, but you look at this game and it's like he kind of put them in a position to be down in this game and he kind of rescued them as well.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of up and down on this performance from Purdy because he looked like a reason they were losing and then was a huge reason they won. So it's always hard to say, like, assess a performance like that, really. Um, the Lions, obviously, like Dan Campbell said, and Dan Campbell keeps it 100% of the time. I love this dude. He goes, "Yeah, we may not be back here," which, first of all, I love that. I love the honesty because this sends the message to the players that we can't just get, you know, uh, I don't remember the word. Get like,
Complacent or
yeah, complacent. There we go. Um, we're figuring it out here. But like that's a big thing. And obviously they kept Ben Johnson. You got 60 million in cap space. You don't have any major free agents to re-sign, but my guess is most of that cap space is gonna go to a Goff extension. And that just makes me feel so icky that you're giving Goff one of these big time quarterback contracts. Not that he hasn't played really well. It just feels like that's a recipe for disaster. Like Daniel Jones, it's like you look at the season he had in 2022. It's like, yeah, he's probably a starting level quarterback, but then at the end of the day, you're giving like $160 million to Daniel Jones, and you're like,
I
what are we
think
doing?
Jared Goff. Oh, real quick, I think Jared Goff is a lot better than Daniel Jones,
Oh
though.
no,
Like,
definitely, but he would also
yeah,
get a
no,
way bigger contract.
I don't. But that's I think just the problem nowadays, and we've seen it with
Yeah,
these the quarterback play this year. I mean, it was a fucking disaster. Like, excuse my language, but like
oh,
it
you're
was
right.
like we hyped it. I feel like we hyped it up preseason. Like, oh my
Yeah.
god, the quarterback play has never been higher, and it's like it's actually terrible. Like it was a disaster this year. Injuries, aside, but yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no worry. I Goff is much better than Daniel Jones. Goff is a good quarterback in this league, even probably without Ben Johnson. But um, I just worry because Ben Johnson will be gone at some point. He's too good of a mind not to
Yeah.
become a head coach at some point. I just I have a little worries about the long-term future. You drafted a linebacker with a very low ceiling in the first round this year. Obviously, I was wrong about Gibbs. Obviously, Laporta and Branch in the second round are absolute studs. A big argument in the favor that, positional value, especially once you get out of these like top 15 picks, isn't super important if you're getting just a
Yeah.
stud. Like Laporta, like not as much with him, but with Branch, like everyone knew he was a clear come in. He either starts at safety or he starts at nickel corner and he's a beast. But people don't want to take that guy in the first round. And it's like, I get it, but come middle of the second round, like, what are we doing? Like, this guy's a
Yeah.
clear, like Pro Bowl caliber prospect. Like, maybe
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Maybe he just hit his ceiling much quicker than expected. But from what I evaluated from him, I felt like there was just no way he wasn't going to be at least a good starter in the slot day one, which just feels very valuable. Nowadays with all the three receiver sets we see. So I was a little lower on the Lions' future immediately after this game when I thought Ben Johnson would be gone. And I didn't really look into their free agency and cap space situation. So I think they'll be able to make some additions. You need another corner. You probably need another linebacker, which sucks because you just spent a first round pick on one. and you just need another dog on the defensive line. You have good players, you have Aiden Hutchinson, but if you have two really good players and an Ali McNeil who's a good starter and some good rotational players, I think that's when this defense could really start cooking. About the Niners, like, yeah, I mean, they're really loaded. Everyone said they couldn't come back because they haven't, and it's a bit like the Mahomes thing where it's like more of situational, and Mahomes, it was entirely situational because he was too good to have ever even had the chance to play on the road.
Yeah.
Which if anything should have been an argument in his favor.
Yeah.
But with the Niners, it's like, oh, they never come back from deficits. It's like, yeah, but they're also kind of never losing. So that's a
Yeah.
big like, maybe they're not the ideal team in terms of how they want to play to come from behind, but they're certainly good enough to, especially when Purdy is like I don't want to say it, but some of his scrambling stuff, it's like where did this come from? Like like, what? I thought he was like this super, super physically ungifted quarterback, but now it's like he doesn't have the worst arm you've ever seen. He's pretty athletic, and he always had this accuracy and decision making ability. And obviously, I'm not an NFL talent evaluator, and I was even further from that, a couple of years ago when Purdy was coming out, but Brock Purdy sucked in college. I will never understand what happened. I remember vividly him getting sacked and throwing a pass like 20 yards backwards, similar to what Deshaun Watson did this year. I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but like I just remember watching that live and being like, "Oh wow, this guy sucks." And then 2 years later, he's like the Super Bowl MVP, probably favorite, or it's him or Mahomes, I'm assuming. But
Yeah, I
like,
think it's Mahomes, but
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I mean, he's top two in MVP, Super Bowl MVP odds. This is ridiculous. Obviously, I don't like the Niners, but this is a very like cool story. Like very impressed. Um, I'm sure that means a lot that a 19-year-old kid is impressed with Brock Purdy. Um, but I will say this defense, like, they kind of got shredded apart. Like
Yeah.
Chase Young, obviously, there was that pretty viral clip of him not giving the best effort. I don't think that was the biggest deal in the world, but certainly not what you would expect from a Niners defense that kind of has that chip on their shoulder mentality that we talked about with the Ravens. It just I don't know. I don't know exactly what the problem is with this defense because they're so talented and have so many good players everywhere. I guess the safeties aren't great. The corners outside of Travarius Ward aren't great. So I guess that's the weakness. I certainly expect Mahomes to tear this defense up. You know, I, we're not going to get too far into the predictions. I will say this. I don't understand the line. I don't understand how we've watched Mahomes this postseason and thought, yeah, he shouldn't be the favorite in any game he plays. Like, it's that simple to me. I obviously know there's way more that goes into it than that. Um, I just find it interesting that Mahomes is getting points right now. I said a lot. I keep on saying I'm talking forever. We're just going on
We're just
alternate yaps.
yappers. Yeah. We're like, oh, it's a
Yeah.
20-minute episode. We're already like 40 deep or nah.
But yeah, I think yeah, that's most of what I have to say about this game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great game. I unfortunately didn't get to watch most of it, due to various schoolwork, but I tuned in for the most of the second half. I mean, first off, like Tipper Caps, the Lions, like no one expected them to get this far this season. Even when they made the playoffs, no one expected it. So crazy, hell of a season. Like you said, like I know they draft like a little differently than some other teams, but it's like they've hit on like all their
All
freaking
the years.
picks for the last like 3 years since Brad Holmes has been there. Like they've done a great job drafting. So at this point, when they pick a guy that like maybe Jack Campbell hasn't been the biggest dog yet, maybe that's the only guy that wasn't the best pick, but like when they pick someone and you're like out of spot, just assume they're like a Hall of Famer at this
Yep.
point. You know, I mean, they've got stars. Like Laporta is going to be one of the best tight ends in the league. He might be the passing of the torch from Kelsey almost.
Agreed.
We'll see. Amon Ra obviously is. People don't really consider him in that top five receiver combo, but he's up there. I mean, he's an absolute star. Um, Jameer Gibbs, Dave Montgomery is, probably the best 1-2 running back punch in the league at this point. Like they've got a ton to look forward to. Like you said, the defense they need some additional guys there. You know, it's a good, it's not bad, but it's just not great. And I think it kind of cost them a little. Obviously, offensively in this, you mentioned the decisions, like that's what it's tough. Like I think it's really tough. Because you've lived and died on that all season. That's why you're there, is the aggressiveness, and I love it. I think the fans love it, but at the same time, it's like I think Dan Campbell is a great coach and has done an incredible job. At sometimes though, it's just pure recklessness. We saw
Yeah.
it in the Dallas game. I mean, that was just idiotic. I know they got screwed, but it's like when you're going for a 2 point from like the 8 yard line or whatever, like that's just reckless. It's the playoffs. You got to kick the field goal. I know your defense is having trouble getting a stop, and it probably wouldn't have mattered. And I get it, and like it was right there. I think you got to take the points there and just tie it up. They totally botched the clock management at the end of the game, having to use a timeout. I get it. It's like you got one of the best lines in the league, really good running back. Still probably should not have run the ball there. There were small things in this game where it's like, yes, Dan Campbell's an incredible coach, and I understand he's going to live and die by his decisions in the fourth downs. But it's like at some point, you got to just make the rational decision and just take the points or just go to OT or what it is. Um, so yeah, that's my thoughts on the Lions. I mean, they're going to be a great team for a while. The Goffs, like you said, like paying him, like obviously, I wouldn't say it has disaster written all over it. It's there's definitely, I think you'll get to a point where you're like, holy cow, we got to pay this guy, 50 million. He's, it's Jared Goff, age 34 or 35 season. Like it's going to be rough, but that's just the NFL these days. The Niners, I mean, holy hell, they've been starting out flat. And I think the difference is if they come out like that against Kansas City, it's done. Like the
Oh,
Super Bowl is
oh,
over because this Kansas City defense is going to be by far the best defense they've faced in the playoffs. Packers and Lions, they got some guys, but it's like these have not been great defenses. And
the Packers fired their defensive coordinator.
yeah, like exactly. Like they these are not defenses that move the needle. So Kansas City is, it's arguably the best defense in the NFL. I mean, they've really, you got to put them up there with like, you know, because I mean, they've done it in the playoffs. You look at a team, I guess Cleveland would be probably the regular season best defense, but it's like they got fucking cooked. So it's like Kansas City's, probably them and the Ravens, but they just beat the Ravens. So I don't know. I'm rambling a little, but they have to come out hot, and they'll have 2 weeks to prepare. And look, I think this is going to be a great game. And the Niners got the star power on offense. I mean, that's the difference between them and the Ravens. It's kind of a reversal. I'm a Purdy guy. I think he's pretty solid. I know he gets a lot of hate for whatever reason. I think people are just like, I don't know what it is. It's just like it's kind of weird, the Purdy hate, because I guess people just hate the Niners. So, but like I don't
Yeah,
know, man. It's like he's just seems like an innocent, like Christian loving, like just kind of guy. Like he's not really a dramatic type person. I don't know. I don't know, but yeah, they got the star power in the weapons, and it's going to be really fun watching. Spags versus Shanahan. I think we saw it in the Super Bowl. These teams look totally different than on both sides of the ball. Really, I mean, some similar guys, but the shift in just, I mean, it's just different. I mean, I don't need to ramble on, but I think it was really impressive how they played in the second half. I mean, if they come out like that, they're winning the Super Bowl hands down. I don't think if their offense can do that against Kansas City's defense, I don't think Kansas City will be able to score as easily as maybe we think. They really struggled in the second half against Baltimore. And obviously Baltimore's got a better defense than San Fran, but I mean, they basically mustered nothing up in that second half, Kansas City. So
that's
I
also been
mean,
a theme.
yeah, they're just a streaky team, and the second half has been problematic for them. Seems like they kind of are able to come out with, a good game plan and have some stuff to throw it, and then once you use that, it's like been a struggle. So, but look, that's why it's so key to have their defense this year. Going to be a great battle. You know, man, I'm excited for this. I really am. The stars are going to be out. I mean, we kind of talked about it. It's going to be the most watched Super Bowl of all time with Taylor Swift and everything going on. Is it bad that I'm saying I'm disappointed at Usher's the halftime performance? I feel like this Super
Oh, the
Bowl needs
millennials are gonna
something.
hate you for that.
I know, well, kill me now, I guess, but I don't know, man. I feel like we need some. It's Vegas. It's like Chiefs, Niners. I don't know, man. I don't know if Usher's doing it for me for the halftime for this game. I don't know. Maybe I'm an idiot. I'm going really off the rails now, but
I love it.
yeah, I don't know. I think I like you said, defense for the Niners has got to play better, and they've got to play better in the first half because if they come out like that, Kansas City's defense is not going to let them go for 27 in the second half. Like that, they might even be lucky to get 27 in the game.
Yeah.
So hey, man, it's where legends are made. I mean, it's fun because you've got Mahomes, where it's like if he wins this one, like it's crazy to say, but like GOAT status is like he's like getting there. Where it's like if Purdy wins this, it's just like Mr. Irrelevant, Super Bowl, probably wins MVP, Super Bowl MVP. I'm saying, just two like kind of really cool stories. So I'm really excited for this one. So maybe I'm a bad person, but I was kind of rooting for the Niners. I think this is the game I wanted with these matchups. But yeah,
This is a better game, I would say. Yeah.
yeah, I think the Chiefs would have destroyed the Lions, maybe. But that's what we said last week about this game, and the Lions played the Niners tight. So props to them on a great season. I'm going to stop talking. I feel like we could probably jump to NBA. I mean, we've kind of previewed the game a little bit, but I don't know if you got anything else to say.
Just quickly on like the last couple drive, like the one before the onside kick for the Lions, like why are we running it on third down? Like pass it on third and then on fourth down, there's no risk of running the time.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you don't get it, the game's over. Like just seems like the logical move to go for it, go for the run on fourth down if you get there. But that's besides the point. It was likely over anyway. They didn't get the onside kick, so it really doesn't matter too much. But that just felt like a small decision. That's like, what are we doing here? But yeah, we want to move on to the NBA. The main news, unfortunately, my glorious king Joel Embiid has a torn meniscus. Yeah, I mean, looking at the recovery time for this, it's about a 2 to 4 week injury if he doesn't get surgery, and it's about a like 3 to 5 month injury if you do get surgery. Could be to 4 to 6. Um, my heavy guess here is that Embiid is going to do everything he can to avoid the surgery here. I don't think he wants to miss a year of his prime, the best year of his career thus far. Which is ridiculous because he had a very impressive MVP season last year and two runner-ups the 2 years before. Um, so obviously a pretty insane stretch of basketball for Embiid, but this has been the bugaboo for him. I mean, the injuries have really he's never really been fully healthy for a playoff run, besides the bubble where they lost in 4 games with no Ben Simmons, um, where he was incredible in those 4 games, and was healthy. Besides that, he hasn't been healthy in the playoffs. He's struggled at times. He kind of faded away in the game 7 against Boston last year. But he's ultimately got to be healthy for the playoffs for this team to have a chance. And you wonder if the status of this injury changes their trade deadline ambitions, if they want to go back to saying this is more of a build for next year type situation. Although I'm pretty pessimistic about that because the free agency pool keeps on drying up, and the guys that are currently going to be free agents that are currently on the roster, such as a DeAnthony Melton, Nico Batum, Pat Bev, Tobias Harris, Kelly Oubre, all these guys have played pretty well. So to me, I think you're trying to make a trade for someone who can be on the team for the next few years and then re-sign most of the guys you have that are upcoming free agents. And then you can potentially add someone on a mid-level exception type deal, which is about 12.5 million a year for teams that don't have cap space, which the Sixers should be able to do. Assuming, Tobias Harris doesn't command another max contract, which will probably be the death of me. Um, but I don't think he's going to be super expensive. I don't think Melton or Batum will be. So I think this team will have the cap space to re-sign everyone and make an addition or two plus an addition at the trade deadline. That just feels like the most realistic way to make this team a championship contender. But again, the Embiid injury complicates that. Obviously, last night, I'm not sure if you saw this, but Maxey had
Yeah.
51 points against the Jazz. Great game. But this just shows for the next couple weeks without Embiid, and now the Sixers have slid down the standings behind the Cavs and the Knicks, who've played really well recently. Um, it's just going to be really tough. Like Utah's a solid team, but to have your best player without Embiid have a career night and you barely win against Utah, I mean, that just goes to show that it's going to be tough sledding. You're going to be happy to beat anything above 500 with Embiid out. Um, so it's going to be tough. This is a really brutal blow for the 76ers. Again, I do expect Embiid will be back and avoid surgery and probably will play really damn well, even if he's not quite 100%. Um, the one thing I will say about this, the NBA as a whole right now is LeBron is getting very cryptic. So I'd very much expect there to be some pretty major roster shakeups with the Lakers. I'd expect the Hawks to trade a few guys. I'd expect the Pistons to make a weird win now trade because they're that bad. I'd expect the Kings, I could see the Kings making a dumb desperation move. There's a lot of things I could see happening. It seems like every deadline in the NBA, there's like one or two guys that gets traded that you're like, whoa, that guy got traded. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm expecting that to happen. I don't think LeBron gets traded. There's been some type
No,
of talk about that. That's not gonna happen. I mean, to be
he's
even if
coming home to
LeBron
the Cavs.
yeah, exactly. I mean, even if LeBron is done in LA, he doesn't want to play in LA. He's not going to want to get traded because like he doesn't want to be known as a guy who, got passed around four teams at the end of his career. Like he
Yeah,
probably in an ideal world wants to stay with the Lakers, but if not, he wants to go to one team, play with Bronny for a few years and retire there. Um, I don't think he wants to go get traded to the Thunder and then sign with the Sixers and then go to the Rockets in like that's not gonna happen. That's not
no.
LeBron. This isn't 2K. Like that's not how this works. Like I really do doubt that, but I would expect someone to get traded. Maybe the Timberwolves make a move because they're in like absolute cap hell next year. So maybe they try to capitalize off some of their guys who are having good years this year, some of their trade value, but that's weird to do as a contending team. So not sure. Um, yeah, I mean the NBA is kind of in the dog days of the season. A lot of teams fighting a lot of injuries. Like the Knicks were playing, Precious Achua played 43 minutes last night at power forward for the Knicks.
It's crazy
Kind of
they're
just
the 3 seed right
they're
now.
the 3 seed. I mean, Brunson is just
A
that guy
dog.
dog. I mean, his stats
Hardenstein's a
scream
dog too.
justice.
Isaiah
Hardenstein,
Harden.
yeah.
This guy
Yeah.
was like a joke a few years
Yeah.
ago, and I didn't even realize he's a dog.
Yeah, no, he's really stepped up. Obviously, the Anunoby trade has been huge for them. I kind of said this last week. I do heavily expect them to trade that expiring Fournier 20 million, and one of their picks from a bunch of other teams, so they won't even have to give up one of their own picks, and would still have extra draft capital just to get another guy who can play 20-25 minutes. Ideally, it's either a guard who can play next to Brunson or a bigger forward who can play next to Randall. Maybe you got two guys like a backup point guard who you don't really trust, or in a backup wing who you don't really trust, but they can both kind of level it out, play some minutes, whatever. You can figure it out, but you need a guy or two. Just one more. Just because you gave up two guys in the quickly RJ Barrett trade and you only got one back realistically, besides an Achua who probably isn't a huge part of your playoff rotation. So just need a few more minutes to go around. But the Knicks are looking really good. The Celtics have obviously looked really good despite losing to a LeBron and AD-less Lakers last night at home, which was really weird. The Bucks obviously fired their head coach, Adrian Griffin. I believe we talked about that a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we did
Um,
last week. Yeah,
yeah, we did last week. What am I thinking? So they're going to be interesting to see what they're like. In the West, it's a bloodbath. It's going to be interesting to see like one of these teams, like the Warriors, might miss the play-in, like the Lakers might miss the playoffs. Um, so that'll be interesting to see it get sorted out. That's kind of all I have for the NBA. What are your thoughts on what's been going on?
yeah. I mean, obviously, Embiid sucks to see. Like you kind of said, I think that's obviously been kind of one of the issues with him is just it feels like he's never 100%. Obviously with the new rules, he's not going to be eligible for MVP, so he's not going to be able to be a two-time MVP, which it seemed like he was already probably going to miss, that
Yeah.
qualification, yeah, I mean, it sucks seeing how good he was playing, but look, hopefully he'll be back in time. I think he'll be back for the playoffs, right? In time for the playoffs, or he should be at least.
If he
Um,
gets surgery and they decide to play it very cautiously, there's a world where he's out for the year, but
wow.
I'd give it a 95% chance he's
Okay.
back by around early March.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sucks to see Sixers will adapt. I mean, they'll probably lose some more games than they were, but this is still a playoff team. Maxey, like you said last night, 51 points. I mean, he's a stud. Um, you know, the East is very interesting right now. I mean, you just had the obviously you got the Celtics at the top, the Bucks now with Doc Rivers. It looks like I'm trying to see they've lost two in a row, so um, maybe Doc Rivers wasn't a good hire. Who would have thought? There's Devin smirks away. Knicks have been playing good. Cavs have been playing good. It's just like, are either of those teams going to be good enough come playoff time to like make a run? I think Mitchell and Brunson have both kind of established themselves as those guys, but we'll see. The Heat are in the 7th seed. That's just dangerous. You never want to see them down
Yeah.
there. Um, yeah, I mean, like you said, the deadline will be interesting. I think the Lakers are obviously kind of a shit show. I mean, you got to Darvin Ham's got to be counting his days at this point. I mean, it's been a nightmare there.
How does he still have a job?
I don't know. I think probably just the thought process is they don't want to make a head coaching move mid-season, but maybe that, it's probably what they should be doing. I mean, I don't even know who they could. I feel like there was one big name that I was like, oh, maybe they
Well,
hire.
Budenholzer.
Yeah, maybe him. I was thinking, I forget who I was. I don't know. LeBron will just be the coach. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, NBA is so interesting. So, there's always shit going on in the regular season. Like you said, the Warriors right now are in a pretty bad spot. There's just a lot of teams, it seems like, that are just frustrated, especially in the West. I mean, it's a mess. I mean, I was looking at the standings, like, one team that I feel like we got to shout out that we haven't really talked about much is the Clippers. I mean, they've been
Yeah.
playing insane, like with James Harden. I mean, I know there was an initial kind of, learning curve, but it's like this team has been one of the best teams in the NBA since then. And,
Yeah,
Russ
since
has played well on the bench. The Pistons, um,
Pistons
are
suck.
playing. Yeah, I was like, did you say Pistons or did I hear you wrong?
Oh no, 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 no. Since the
Oh,
0-5 start, they're like 30-6 or something like that. They've been
okay.
like
Yeah, I was like
ridiculous.
the Pistons. I was like, what?
Yeah,
I was
no, the
like, what?
Pistons.
I was like, well, am I that out of touch? Yeah. No, the Clips have been playing good. I mean, Kawhi's had a great year. It's just been, I think for them, they put all their chips in one basket this year. So we'll see how it ends up for them. Obviously, the Thunder, a fun young team. The Nuggets are, you never want to count Jokic out. So, I think we're starting to see the playoff picture take shape a little bit. But obviously, there's going to be a lot of movement. We'll see what happens at the deadline. I mean, I think you've covered it pretty well, so I'm not going to get too much more into it. But yeah, it's kind of what I got on the NBA. I mean, it's trudging along. We had All-Star selection, so um, there's still a ways to go. What are they? They probably got like 30-ish games left to play, right? Something like that, I
Yeah,
heard.
like 32, something like that for most
30,
teams.
32, yeah. So, not winding down just quite yet, but they're getting there. So, yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, just really quickly, I'll say this about the 65 game requirement. I think it makes sense for the MVP. It's rare you see, it'll push guys to if they're near that mark, but their team's clinched the 1 seed, they're gonna play the rest of the games, whatever. That's fine. With
Yeah,
all NBA, I mean, first of all, if a guy played 45 games and put up a great season, they wouldn't make all NBA because that's part of the criteria.
yeah,
Second of all, this comes into how much players get paid, which really feels icky because just doesn't feel like a guy played 64 games but was one of the best players in the NBA and is arbitrary based on this arbitrary number is not going to be able to get a super max contract now. That just doesn't feel like the best course of action, but I get it with the MVP. It's hard to look at a guy like Embiid because, like you said, like he probably wasn't going to play enough games to get the MVP this season, regardless. But you look at a guy like Halliburton, he's almost certainly going to miss 18 or more games. I think he's already missed 15. I mean, he's a guy who's absolutely having a no doubt all NBA season, and yet he's probably not going to make it. He's probably not going to be eligible for a supermax contract.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy, like, right? I mean, I get the point of the rule. The load management has gone a little bit too far. I think there is something to be said about the amount of possessions in today's game and the amount of space you're covering and the toll that takes on your knees. And I think when you look at, the average, star player in the NBA in 1990 was playing 75 or so games, and now they're playing like 68 or so games. And I think that explains the, maybe 5 games of the difference. But then you do have some load management, some my knee hurts. I would be playing if this was a playoff game, but I'm going to sit out because we're playing the Pistons. Like, that
Yeah.
happens a little bit too much. And I get why that has to, be part of the CBA, has to be included. But with all NBA, it just gives me a bad feeling. I don't like it. I think there's, all the players don't like it for a reason. I just think it's the right idea, but probably the wrong execution. I'd expect them to change that rule this offseason, to be honest. Once Joel Embiid averages like 30, 12, and 6, or 35, 12, and 6, and doesn't make all NBA because he played 58 games or whatever. Like, I just think that'll be a big talking point going into the offseason. I'm ready to move on to baseball if you want.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, so we had a pretty major trade. Corbin Burnes going from the Brewers. I believe he's on an expiring contract, correct?
Yeah, he'll be a free agent next year.
So that's the big reason, A, he's getting traded, and B, that he didn't go for as much as people would have expected. Obviously, the Orioles have a ridiculously loaded pipeline of prospects. I believe they traded a shortstop named something
Yeah,
Ortiz.
Joey Ortiz. Yeah.
Joey Ortiz, and a pitcher who is, I believe, a first round pick. So some solid prospects, but it's not like they got certainly not a Jackson Holiday, I believe his name is. I'm not
Yeah.
great.
I mean, he's not going anywhere.
No, I know, but you didn't get him. You didn't get that
Yes.
like pure stat or whatever. I don't know a ton about the baseball prospect system and what's normal for a star trade. I'll leave that more to you, but to me, it just seemed like a little bit less than I expected. Again, I didn't expect like their number one prospect to get traded away, or anyone that's, contributing to the MLB team in a major way. So I guess I just expected a little bit more for someone as good as Corbin Burnes, but the Orioles are loaded now. It's really frustrating because they're gonna have a great year and then be relying on Craig Kimbrell in the postseason, which we know how that goes.
I know, it's a
Um,
shame Batista's hurt.
yeah, he's out for the year, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big blow because they honestly are just such a loaded roster. Obviously, we saw them kind of get introduced to the playoffs last year, got swept by the eventual World Series champs. So it's kind of hard to say what they would have done if they hadn't played, probably the best team last year, but certainly a bit of a disappointing playoffs, but not one that sets you back because you're so ahead of schedule already. Um, so I just think, yeah, you're getting a true ace. You already have some good pitchers. You have a loaded lineup. You still have a pretty good back end of the bullpen, although again, you're missing your best guy and you're relying on someone who I don't trust very much personally. Um, but yeah, this team is loaded. It's going to be interesting to see what Burnes gets and to see if, what the open market looks like for him. I think next year is a better free agency class, so maybe he's less of like the star of the show than an Ohtani was, and obviously he's nowhere near Ohtani because Ohtani's Ohtani. But um, just it'll be interesting to see what his free agency looks like, especially depending on how the Orioles season goes. What are your thoughts on this, Griff?
Yeah. I was surprised that you know, uh this deal happened in the first place. I mean, I sorry, I just totally blanked. Yeah, it caught me off guard. Especially so close to spring training. I think it shows, the Brewers are kind of heading in one direction, Orioles are heading in another. The package they got, they probably could have gotten a little more. It's just tough because, looking at, the way MLB top 100 ranks them, their Orioles top 5 guys are all within the top 32 prospects. So it's like to give up one of those guys is it's a steep price. And I think in this case the Brewers probably ultimately just decided that more is better. They also got a comp pick that's 34th overall in the
Oh
draft,
yeah,
so
that's true.
pretty high up. So I think it's like fair. I mean, they probably could have done a little bit better, but um, you know, I think a lot of it will depend. DL Hall is a guy who's kind of been around for a little bit. He's only pitched 2 years, but he's been in the system for a while. Pitched more as a reliever last year, so we'll see kind of what happens with that. Um, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting trade. I think for the Orioles, it's great. They kind of needed this, another starter. You've got Kyle Bradish, who had a great year last year, and I think I saw a stat today that them two would have combined for the best 1-2 punch ERA in all of baseball last year. So they got a really good top and head of the rotation. They needed to make this move, and I'm excited to see what this team does. I mean, they've got a strong roster. Grayson Rodriguez is there. He had a good end of the year. John Means, I believe, is still there. So it's a good rotation. Obviously, really young, a lot of young talent everywhere, like you mentioned. So they're going to be another really good team. I think they'll have some regression. I don't think they were as good as their record was last year, and
Agreed.
the AL East I think just got better. I mean, I think the Yankees are going to be a lot better this year. The Rays are always a threat. The Blue Jays are going to be good again. Red Sox aren't just like a pushover 60-win team. So, it's probably one of the best divisions, if not the best in baseball still. But this was a move they needed to make because they kind of had a quiet offseason otherwise. Like they didn't really make any big moves. They did just also, the team is getting sold to two, I believe, private equity billionaires, which is
Yeah.
huge because they've had an ownership problem there for a while. So it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how this team goes going forward. I don't think these owners are going to be, I don't think it's a Steve Cohen level of worth, but I think we're probably going to see this payroll go up because it has consistently been one of the lower payrolls in all of baseball. Obviously, they've had the luxury of just having so much young talent, but they haven't really brought in, any other star talent. And I think this is hopefully a guy who they end up keeping. I think if they could lock down Corbin Burnes for the future, that'd be huge. So I like the move. I think it's a great trade. And, for Milwaukee, they're just kind of, I don't know. They haven't been good enough the last few years. They got, really limited payroll capacity, and you lose David Stearns, you lose Craig Counsell. So I think this is kind of just a team that's heading in towards a rebuild, which sucks to see, but look, that's baseball. It happens, and especially for these teams that are not willing to spend money, it's tougher to stay in contention when guys start hitting free agency that need big contracts. So props to them. They made the move, and yeah, it's kind of all I got.
Yeah. I have one other thing to say. I think the Orioles remind me a lot of the Thunder in the NBA, just like a team that's really ahead of schedule, but still has, with the Thunder, it's both a young core and up and coming draft picks, and with the Orioles, it's also a young core that's already on the MLB team and a young core of prospects that haven't quite hit the MLB yet. Um, and they both obviously had great seasons. The Thunder more in 2023, 2024, the Orioles in 2023. But I just see a lot of similarities between a rebuilding team in a smaller market that's really ahead of schedule. And then they have those kind of the window question where it's like,
Yeah,
do you go for it now while your players are young and cheap, or do you wait till they're in their prime? Like what exactly is the best course of action here? So I think that's an interesting parallel. But besides that, I'm ready to wrap up if you are.
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for watching. Obviously, we'll be back next week with our official Super Bowl predictions, get a little bit deeper into some specific matchups. I'm gonna look at pretty deeply into this matchup. See
Yeah,
some interesting things I want to get into. The trade deadline will have passed probably by the next time we're
yeah. I'd
recording, I
imagine.
believe. So we'll have some updates on what happens, a better look at what the NBA is gonna look like, probably some buyout market type guys. And we'll talk MLB if anything else in the MLB happens. We'll get more into college basketball soon.
Yeah,
Griff and I were talking off air before the show. We were like, yeah, we're not quite ready for college basketball talk a little early in the year,
It's
but we're
there's so much always going on. It's like you don't
exactly.
even know where to start. I mean, holy cow.
Exactly. Yeah, but the closer we get to that in March Madness and conference tournaments, we'll be talking more about that. So I'm excited for that. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week on Outside the Arena.